metal part at the tip of the bullet as well. And so that's how it's made a wonderful thing. When you go to fire it then, this is just to protect it from sparking. The flint is very sharp. It's sharp like a knife. And what it does is it scrapes here. You can see all the scraping. It scrapes here and makes a little spark. It goes really, really fast and gets really, really hot. It scrapes off a piece of metal that gets super red hot. It hits the pan and goes poof. And a spark goes in that tiny little hole, if I'm lucky. And then it hits this powder and this goes poof out the barrel. So it's two parts. If it gets wet, it's a problem. If the touch hole gets plugged, we get a little flash in the pan, but nothing else. So that's the figure.
The flash in the
pan. It's like, and then nothing else happens. Yep. And the parts of my musket that I must maintain are my lock. It's my lock. This is my stock, and this is my barrel. So if I have everything I need, I've got my lock, stock, and barrel.
So now, how often does it misfire? Is that
it depends.
Pretty regular?
Yeah.
Like
so
if you're a skilled, take care of your stuff.
If you take care, yeah. So you're always maintaining as much as you can. Make sure that the spring's going to go. So one of the first thing that happens is that the flint might not be scraping it well enough. So you might be able to see. If I close this, you might be able to see a spark. A little bit of a spark. Now, if it doesn't make the spark, then I'm standing out there and it goes click, and nothing happens. So then you can clean things off. You can change your flint. You can try to, you just have to do what you can. Now, if the powder gets wet, you're really done. Like there's nothing you can do.
So
try to dry things out.
Keep your powder dry.
Keep your powder dry. You gotta keep your powder dry. And there was an event where we were up at Fort Ticonderoga, and we had a very large number of soldiers, and we're firing, and it started to rain, and we thought, this is it, we're done. Drip, drip, our powder's gonna be wet. We kept going and kept going. The rain would hit the barrel, it was like rusting immediately. And it wasn't until we were all fascinated, like, this is amazing. We put powder in the pan, until I looked down with my hat and the water rolled right off into my pan. It was like a funnel.
No.
And then it was over. I couldn't fire it. But it was actually keeping it all hot enough and dry enough that we could keep going in the rain for quite a while.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you have to do that whole process every time you shoot?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so the kind of warfare that we have right now it's a warfare really of speed and numbers.
Right.
So if you have 50 French soldiers and 50 British soldiers, and the French soldiers can load and fire 3 times a minute, how many musket balls can we shoot at the other side? 3 times. 50 times 3. 5 times 3
is...
Yeah, and then times 10, 15 times 10, 100, 150. So this side shoots 150 shots at the other side. If their side can only load and fire 2 times a minute, 50 times 2 is, 5 times 2 is 10, and then times 10 again gets you another 0. So 100. So they fire 100 times, we fire 150 times.
Yeah.
And we're all aiming in the general direction, so it's not something where you really want to spend the time picking somebody out.
Okay.
Just
It's
aiming.
shooting.
It's the speed. Yes. So how many can I go that way versus how many this way?
Okay.
And
So if one of them has the same AR-15.
yeah. Game changer. Yes. The rules change. Exactly. So, so through history, when this changes, tactics change. And then out there, you could see there were a couple people that did have rifles, and that would be like the natives might have rifles, or some of the British militia. And the rifles are barrels that have a groove cut down inside them. It takes a little longer to load, but you can hit something that you're aiming at. So they might be really picking out a particular target. And that was one of the reasons that the French were so successful is, yes, we're fighting in the lines, but we also have native allies that'll hide behind a tree, pick somebody, hit them, load. And so they didn't have to worry about the speed. And, of course, they wanted to go home with stuff. So they were, they're going to hide and, do what they can. They're not going to throw themselves in the middle of things. Yeah, so that's just, and you march towards each other. So our cartridge boxes have 9 rounds. So 9 holes. So the plan is that on a field of battle, nice large field, this group marches forward, fires, and this group marches forward and fires. And when you approach each other, about the time that you're running out, you're close enough to put your bayonet on.
It all seems so civilized until then.
Yep, and you put the bayonet on, and then you see a row of people coming at you with this. And then you approach the bayonet. So that's the strategy that is used.
Generous word.
Yeah, it is strategy. Yeah. And then the larger round box is really the army. The French army had these in Europe, and they were spending more time in the field. They needed more rounds, and we find that there are letters written back to Europe saying, those boxes that the army had, we have those because it's not necessarily being fought in these nice big rows anymore, and there's these little sieges and skirmishes, and they're learning a different way to fight. The systems are changing. It's just like George Washington at Fort Necessity. After he had Drummondville was killed, he knew from Fort Duquesne that the French were going to come out and attack him, so he built a fort out of necessity because he's going to get attacked. And he was kind of like, this is my first battle. And he gets everybody lined up, and he's kind of ready to go, and he's ready for the French. And they don't leave the woods and start firing at him, and he has to go.
What is this? Right.
You're not doing this right. This is how you're supposed to do this, because there are rules. So then he had to sort of regroup, get his men behind the earthworks, and it changes things. So the weapons you have changes. What you need when you see the gorget, the officers are wearing, there's a little piece of metal around the neck.
I was noticing
That's
that.
remnants of suits of armor.
Okay.
Because a suit of armor, one of these, not going to be effective. This will go through. The suit of armor slows you down. This will go through it. So the suit of armor becomes pointless when you start to get muskets going on. So again, the technology changes. Each thing changes the next thing. So it changes strategies and things like that. So
Thank you so much.
and this is about 11 pounds. I can hold on to it while you hold it.
Whoa. Heavy. Wait, so can you hold it again?
Sure. You want a picture?
Yeah, I'd love a picture. Holding it.